Hello, my name is Gerardo Ramirez in the Federal Program Compliance Division of the Texas Education Agency. This presentation will provide a basic overview of the Title I Part D program. This presentation provides general information and should not be used as an all-inclusive overview of the Title I Part D statutory requirements in the Every Student Succeeds Act, referred to as ESSA in the presentation. The Title I Part D is composed of three subparts. Subparts 1 and 2 establish the prevention and intervention programs for children and youth who are neglected, delinquent, or at risk. This law provides supplemental funding to state and local education agencies as part of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, as amended by the Every Student Succeeds Act. Subpart 3 establishes program evaluations that must be conducted for any programs under Subpart 1 and Subpart 2. These funds are dedicated to improving educational services to children and facilities for the neglected or delinquent. The goal is to enable program recipients to meet the same student performance standards that all children in the state are expected to meet. Improved academic performance will facilitate the transition of students from correctional programs to further education or employment. The Department of Grant Compliance and Administration at the Texas Education Agency administers two formula programs under this law. Title I Part D, Subpart 1 covers the state agencies such as the Windham School District and Texas Juvenile Justice Department. Title I Part D, Subpart 2 covers all local education agencies, or otherwise known as LEAs. Always remember that Subpart 1 funds are meant for state agency programs, while Subpart 2 funds are meant for local education agencies. For the purpose of this presentation, we will focus on Title I Part D, Subpart 2. There are three purposes of the Title I Part D, Subpart 2 program. The funds must be used to carry out high-quality education programs to prepare children and youth for secondary school completion, training, employment, or further education. To provide activities to facilitate the transition of such children and youth from correctional program to further education or employment, and to operate programs in local schools, including schools operated or funded by the Bureau of Indian Education for children and youth returning from correctional facilities, and programs which may serve at-risk children and youth. There is a list of 13 requirements for the Title I Part D Subpart 2 subgrantees. These requirements are listed in the Title I Part D Subpart 2 Program Guide and in the ESSA Consolidated Program Application Handbook. These are: provide a description of the program, provide a description of formal agreements between the LEA and correctional facilities and alternative school programs, including Secretary of the Interior and Indian Tribes, provide a description of coordination with facilities working with delinquent children and youth, ensuring their participation in comparable local school education programs, provide a description of programs to facilitate successful transition of children and youth returning from correctional facilities and types of services offered, provide a description of the characteristics, including learning difficulties, substance abuse problems, and other special needs of the children and youth returning from correctional facilities, describe how the LEA will coordinate existing education programs to meet unique education needs of children and youth, provide a description of how the LEA will coordinate with existing social, health, and other services to meet the needs of students returning from correctional facilities, including prenatal healthcare and nutrition services, parenting and child development classes, childcare, targeted reentry and outreach programs, and referrals to community resources and flexibility. Provide a description of partnerships with institutions of higher education or local businesses to facilitate post-secondary and workforce success for children and youth returning from correctional facilities, such as credit-bearing coursework, enrollment in post-secondary education, participation in career and technical education programming, and mentoring services. Provide a description of how the program will involve parents and family members to improve the educational achievement of children, assist in dropout prevention activities, and prevent the involvement in delinquent activities. Provide a description of coordination with other federal, state, and local programs, such as Title I of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act and career and technical education programs. Provide a description of coordination with Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act of 1974, if applicable. Provide a description of coordination and collaboration with probation officers to assist children and youth. Provide a description of efforts to ensure correctional facilities are aware of the child's existing individualized education program. Provide a description of steps the LEA will take to find alternative placements for children and youth interested in continuing their education but unable to participate in a traditional public school program. Now that we talk about delinquent youth and they need to be adjudicated, let's chat about what this adjudication means. Adjudicated simply refers to the formal legal process by which a judge or arbiter reviews evidence, including legal reasoning offered by litigants and opposing parties, to come to a decision in a legal matter. Remember that youth needs to be adjudicated to be delinquent or in need of supervision in order to meet the eligibility criteria for the program. Now, we will cover eligibility for the Title I Part D Subpart 2 program. In order to apply for the Title I Part D Subpart 2 funds, the LEA must meet at least one of the following criteria. They must serve students who live in a residential facility for neglected or delinquent. They must have a residential facility for the neglected or delinquent located within its boundaries, or must be an open enrollment charter school that either operates a residential facility for the neglected or delinquent or provides educational services to students who live in such facility. By now you have heard mentioning of neglected and delinquent multiple times. Before we go any further, let's take a look at the definition of each of those terms. The official definition of neglected is a child, youth, or student who has been committed to an institution other than a foster home or voluntarily placed under applicable state law due to abandonment, neglect, or death of his or her parents or guardians. The official definition of delinquent is a child, youth, or student who resides in a public or private residential facility other than a foster home that is operated for the care of children and youth who have been adjudicated delinquent or in need of supervision. The LEA will make the decision of what youth is being serviced and what is being documented. Now that we have established the definitions of neglected and delinquent, we also have to keep in mind other student eligibility criteria. The students must meet the following: have resided in the facility at least one day in October, be ages 5 to 17, exclude children under the conservatorship of the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, and exclude foster care children. The at-risk definition found in the Title I Part D statute is different than the one, for example, in State Compet. Please take a moment to review the at-risk criteria and notice how the definition is written in such a way that you're able to then provide in at-risk program. The Title I Part D Subpart 2 requires the LEA to describe how they will involve parents and family members of children's service in order to improve their educational achievement, help in dropout prevention, as well as the help preventing involvement of their children in delinquent activities. The LEA is required to describe such process. Now let's cover uses of funds. When determining allowable use of funds, the LEA is responsible to make sure that it's reasonable necessary, that they review the comprehensive assessment, looks at the evaluation of student achievement. And when determining allowable use of funds, always keep in mind EDGAR requirements as well as district policies and procedures. Here are some of the recommended uses of funds. Under Title I Part D, Subpart 2, S Statute 1424, LEAs may use these funds for programs that serve children and youth returning to local schools from correctional facilities and assisting in the transition, dropout prevention programs serving at-risk children and youth, coordination of health and social services for youth to improve likelihood of youth completing education, special programs to meet their unique academic needs, including career and technical education, special education, career counseling, curriculum-based youth entrepreneurship education, and financial aid assistance for post-secondary education, mentoring and peer mediation programs. As previously mentioned, transition services are one of the recommended uses of funds. I would like to take a moment to highlight the importance of transition services. These services focus on helping children who are neglected or delinquent re-enter school successfully or to find employment after they leave the institution and return to the local community. It is important that the LEA has a transition plan in place in order to help the youth with re-entry. Some of the allowable activities include but are not limited to pupil services, including counseling, psychological, and social work services designated to meet the needs of children and youth who are neglected or delinquent, tutoring and mentoring, and reentry orientation programs, including transition centers and reentry centers in high schools. One of the allowable uses of funds is to use funds for Pay for Success initiative. The question that comes often is what is Pay for Success initiative? This initiative is a performance-based grant, contract, or cooperative agreement awarded by a public entity in which a commitment is made to pay for improved outcomes that result in social benefit and direct cost savings or cost avoidance to the public sector. Now, we will go over program evaluation. As mentioned previously, Support 3 establishes the program evaluation for Support 1 and Support 2. In conducting each evaluation under Section 1431A, an LEA shall use multiple and appropriate measures of student progress. Each LEA shall submit evaluation results to TEA, use the results of evaluations to plan and improve subsequent programs for participating children and youth, and more information regarding Title I Part D program evaluations may be found in the program guide. This leads us into compliance monitoring. Compliance monitoring occurs in a three-step process. The U.S. Department of Education monitors the state, the Texas Education Agency, will monitor the LEA, and the LEA monitors the facility. Keep in mind that since the LEA is the one receiving the funding, they are the ones responsible for the appropriate implementation of the program. Upon certification and submission of the ESSA Consolidated Federal Grant Application, LEAs certify that they will comply with all requirements noted in the statute. All requirements can be found in the program-specific provisions and assurances posted on the TA Grants Opportunities page. To monitor the compliance of each eligible entity receiving ESSA funds, the state conducts an annual validation process for LEAs. The annual validation process for LEAs addresses the statutory requirements based on program implementation and effectiveness for the current grant year. During the annual validation process, the state randomly selects LEAs to submit documentation for the program compliance requirements. TEA reviews the documentation to determine if subgrantee met the statutory requirements as noted in the validation guidance document. The Federal Fiscal Monitoring Division is responsible for monitoring the expenditures of federal grant subrecipients to ensure federal funds are used for authorized purposes in compliance with federal statutes, regulations, and the terms and conditions of federal awards. The ESSA Consolidated Compliance Report is completed by LEAs annually to document that LEAs complied with the program-specific provisions and assurances in the preceding application year. LEAs are responsible for indicating the sources of documentation used to establish compliance. The documentation is to remain on file at the LEA. However, it must be readily available upon request from the Texas Education Agency for audit and/or validation monitoring purposes. The ESSA Consolidated Compliance Report will assess specific statutory requirements. The TEA's SC 9000 annual survey of children in local residential facilities for the neglected and delinquent collects data from districts with eligible students and facilities. The request is sent through the Federal Fiscal Compliance Reporting Division. It is typically due in early December. At any point, the LEA is welcome to report if there's a facility that has closed or is interested in adding a new facility. Contact the FCCR division by email at compliance@tea.texas.gov. If you have questions concerning if a facility is eligible, contact program staff in the Federal Program Compliance Division. The Department of Education uses the annual reporting of children for neglected and delinquent youth to collect information to determine the amount of funding allocated annually to states under Title I Part D, Subpart 2. The Texas Education Agency then uses the count to calculate the state Subpart 2 allocation. The neglected count figures into the Title I Part A allocation for the LEA in which the facility is located. At-risk youth may be served with Title I Part D Subpart 2 funds, but they do not generate funding. For more information on this process, please refer to the ESSA Funding Reference Manual. Entitlement amounts for the current school year for these and other grants are available on the Grants Administrations Division webpage. Title I Part D Subpart 2 is found in the ESSA Consolidated Final Amounts by LEA. Now, let's talk about facility programs. The U.S. Department of Education, alongside with the Office of Management and Budget, have worked on a packet for data collection covering years 22-23, 23-24, and 24-25. In this packet, we see the inclusion of different facility programs. So breaking things down, we see the law, ESTA, which then provides definitions for neglected, delinquent, and at risk. On the neglected side, we see the desegregation in categories such as group homes, shelters, community day programs, residential treatment centers, and others. On the delinquent side, we see the disaggregation in categories such as adult corrections, community day programs, juvenile detention centers, shelters, group homes, ranch wilderness centers, long-term secure juvenile facilities, and other. Please note that these changes are on the way we report data, not on the program requirements. For more information, please check out the compliance report instructions. TEA has produced some resources available to everyone. Up next, we will cover some of these resources. Some major resources are the program guide and the frequently asked questions document. These documents cover critical information and frequently asked questions that have been submitted to TEA for clarification. The Texas Education Agency, in collaboration with Education Service Centers and Capacity Building Initiative, produced three resources for LEAs to use: the formal agreement, the agreement sample, and the considerations for formal agreements document. Another resource that was created was the definitions two-page document. This resource is available in the Title I Part D Capacity Building website. For more information, please reach out to the Title I Part D Program Director on the contact information listed.